Hey everyone, welcome back. If you've tried to deploy anything on Azure in the last year and you felt confused or you don't understand why we have Foundry, why we have hubs, let me tell you that you are not the only one. And to prove that, this video is a result of my frustration trying to understand that. Because right now in Azure, you can find all these things. There is an Azure AI service resource. There is an AI hub. There is a hub-based project. There is a Foundry project. And if you look carefully, behind all those, there is also an Azure Machine Learning workspace. Which one do you need? Are they the same thing? Are they related? Today, I'm going to try to explain this one and hopefully help you resolve those questions. And by the end of this video, you will know exactly what each resource is and how they relate. So let's get into it. To understand why everything looks the way it does today, we need to go a few years back. Because Azure AI study started with Azure Cognitive Services. The idea was simple. We have like a collection of AI capabilities and each one has its own service. It's like an standalone resource with its own endpoint, its own key, and even its own billing. You needed computer vision, then you deploy a vision resource. Same for the speech, same for language. And when Azure OpenAI came out, yes, yet another resource we have to deploy with its own provider and its own approval process. So the model was simple and explicit. We as engineers knew exactly what we were deploying. Then Azure introduces Azure AI Services Consolidation. Now you have one single resource to unify all those AI capabilities that we just saw. Suddenly, with one single endpoint and key, you could have vision, speech, and also now OpenAI. It was a good simplification, but then the rebranding started, and is when the things get a little confused. The rename pipeline looks something like this. It is not 100% accurate, but you get the idea of what I want to transmit. So we started with Cognitive Services. Then it was renamed to Azure AI Services. At that time, we have something called Azure AI Studio, which was renamed to Azure AI Foundry. And last year, around November, they introduced Microsoft Foundry. And currently, we have Classic AI Foundry and the new Microsoft Foundry. All these renames in a timeline of 3 years, 2 years. And I think the root cause of the confusion is that these new renames introduce new concepts and also new user experiences because they change the portal. And what's even more confused is that they keep the old ones alive. You are not misunderstanding anything. You are just looking at two generations of architectures which are living side by side and even at the same URL. Before I get into the resources themselves, I need to show you something in the portal. If you go to ai.azure.com, you will see a toggle button here for a new Foundry. This is not just a UI change or preference. This is exposing two fundamental different architectures, different project types, different feature sets. So the classic experience, this one that you see here, is where you work with the old hub-based architecture. And the new one that I can show you because I don't have a project created it, it's where you work with Modern Foundry projects. So both coexist right now and Microsoft supports both. But only one, which is the new one, is receiving new feature enhancements. Let me break down each architectural model, starting with the classic one. The classic model is built on top of Azure Machine Learning, and the type of Azure Resource Manager is this one. And the kind of this resource is a hub. It is a completely different provider from Cognitive Services. So here on the top we have the AI Hub, which manages the governance. It manages who have the access to which projects, security, network isolation, we have shared compute, and so on. Under the hub, we have projects, but it's hub-based projects, not the new ones. So it is individual workspaces where the actual AI development happens. It means prompt flows, evaluations, and so on. In this case, what makes the hub expensive to provision is because when we deploy a hub, it auto-provisions these 4 resources that we see in the left and storage. And on top of all this, when you provision a hub, it automatically also provisions a Microsoft Foundry. And I think this last point is the source of confusion. You deploy one hub and you get 5 or 6 resources, including a Microsoft Foundry, which you didn't explicitly ask for. The hub uses that auto-create Foundry to access the model deployments from the hub. In the new modern architecture, it's a bit simpler. At the top, we have Microsoft Foundry. This is the type of the resource. And the kind is Azure AI Services. If you notice, it uses a cognitive services resource manager, which is the same that we have for the standalones Vision, OpenAI, and so on that we saw before. Under this one, we have Foundry projects, which basically are childs of this resource because it is the same ID and appends this accounts slash project. In this scenario, we don't have any machine learning, no hub, we don't have to deploy a storage account, key vaults, container registry, and so on, because Microsoft manages all this already. The new or modern Microsoft Foundry architecture gives you access to all OpenAI deployments, and more importantly, I think, gives you a unified view of all the AI capabilities that we just saw before: vision, speech to text, phone, and so on, into one place. And more recently, we can now develop AI agents inside Microsoft Foundry. And there is one critical point that I want to call out here, because in the official documentation, they said that new agents or model-centric capabilities are going to be available for Foundry projects, not for hub-based projects. Everything in the new Microsoft Foundry lives under cognitive services, but this single type has different kinds. For Foundry, we have AI services. For the project, also AI services, but we still have the same kinds that we had before: OpenAI, speech, language, and vision. The Foundry resource that we see here covers vision, speech, language, and so on, all in one. That is the new capability that they added it in Foundry, and that's why it looks like it is duplicating the standalone resources that we already have. This is a key contrast compared to the classic hub, because remember that the classic lives under Machine Learning Services, which is a completely different provider with its own separate RBAC model. There is one more thing that I want to touch, because this sometimes trips people up, and it's connections in both classic and modern. So for classic, we require most of the connections to the external resources. We need to do a model deployment. We connect to an external OpenAI standalone resource, and also connections to Keyboard, to the storage accounts, and so on. And also classic can connect to the modern Microsoft Foundry to access any model deployments that we did here. What I didn't say is that in the modern one, we can also connect to standalone resources. And you may ask, if you said that we have a unified endpoint now where we can deploy all of this, why do we need to still connect to external resources? You may have a situation in which you deployed already all your standalone resources, Vision, Document, the new OpenAI model, and you don't want to migrate that to the modern Microsoft Foundry. So what you do is a connection to that standalone resource. This Microsoft Foundry can connect to Azure Keyboard or to Azure AI Search, which is a completely different service that sometimes it's tied with the model deployments. We talk a bit about Azure Machine Learning here, even though this video is for Microsoft Foundry. So I want to make clear that Azure Machine Learning is a completely different platform for a different persona. We use Azure Machine Learning to train or fine-tune our custom models, whilst Microsoft Foundry we used and built on top of foundational models, OpenAI, Mistral, Llama. We have our custom model registry in machine learning. For Foundry, we have the model catalog that is already provided by Azure. The ARM provider for machine learning, it's Machine Learning Services, while for Microsoft Foundry, we saw that it is Cognitive Services. And the type of persona that will be working on Azure Machine Learning will be a data scientist or an ML engineer. And for Microsoft Foundry, we have now the new role called AI engineer or an application developer. The takeaway here is that the classic AI Foundry Hub that we saw is an implementation of an Azure Machine Learning workspace. That's why we have to reference in this video. And the modern Microsoft Foundry breaks this dependency entirely. Let me put all this together in one place. Every resource, every relationship in this architecture map. We started looking at legacy standalone resources in the beginning: speech, vision, language. This still works. We have Microsoft Foundry, which is the new and modern way of developing GenAI applications. This one contains all the AI capabilities that we have here below into one endpoint. We need to deploy it. If you already have these legacy standalone resources, you can connect from this Microsoft to the existing one without having to migrate them. we have the classic Foundry, which is basically built on top of the machine learning workspace. In this one, we can connect to existing resources again, and we can also connect to Microsoft Foundry. This one won't get any new updates related to AI agents or anything that comes with that area. And then we have Azure Machine Learning, which basically we mentioned that it is a completely different resource, but in this case we need to talk about it because the AI Hub is built on top of. Here's my honest summary of all what we just saw. Azure AI has two generations of architecture running in parallel, using the same URL, the same portal, but they have different concepts, different workflows when we just toggle one button. I think the confusion exists for three specific reasons. First, what I just mentioned, the experiences live in the same portal using the same URL. Second, because in the new Foundry that we added it is using the cognitive service resource type, which is also the same type to what the standalone AI capabilities have for vision, for speech, and so on. And third, because when you create a hub-based project, it creates also a Foundry that we don't specify how to do it. I should just create it automatically. If this helped you to clear the things up, just let me know in the comments. Also, if you have any clarifications or make any suggestions for this video, just let me know and talk to you in the next one. Bye.